I next call Representative O'Brien who did not, but I would ask him if you would please restrict your remarks to 5 minutes, not 10. I'm going to allow more time for the people who have massive spreadsheets or technical information to give us, but we can't get through this afternoon otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee, for hearing from me. I know with some interest that the member from Nashua has now showed up with a bucket. I notice this bucket is somewhat larger, as well it should be, because it has to be filled up with $1 billion tax increase. But, you know, just as there should be honesty in budgets, there should be honesty in buckets. And if that was an honest bucket, it would still have some holes in it, because it's just not the amount that would be raised through the tax increase that we're trying to prevent leaks. It's the amount of money we take now. And indeed, the amount of money we take now, if those leaks were closed, would put $75 million a year back into the highway fund. I heard the member from Nashua talk about how even with this tax, we're just going to get to where we are now because he's come up with some belief we need $35 million more. We could have $75 million more if we just close the leaks. 16 years ago, in a gubernatorial debate in New Hampshire, one of the candidates said the following. She said, "I think we've got to do a better job in state government with the funds that we have." Jean Shaheen said those words when asked about the perennial problem of red-listed bridges and red-listed roads. And her remarks had a specific proposal. She said, "I think we've got to make sure that we don't rob the Highway Trust Fund and take that money and use it for other needs, just as we have recently when we changed the highway enforcement officers and took the money to pay them out of the highway fund." The amendment that I have brought forward that is in front of you is an amendment that does exactly what then candidate Jean Shaheen asked to have done. It stops the diversion of funds. Now, this is the amendment that essentially we brought to the House floor a little over a week ago with one change. We heard that there was a constitutionally required allocation of funds to this that would have to go to the supervision of highways. Now, it is Representative Over's amendment, and it has Representative Over's name on it because he will introduce it, I understand, during the executive session. This amendment is substantially that which was presented as a floor amendment by 10 members at the last hearing on this bill on the House floor. The difference is this. There was an argument which we continue to believe is a false constitutional argument that somehow this legislature has to spend money on supervision of highways. Indeed, I've gone to another number of constitutional lawyers who don't follow the members' analysis there, but we want to take it off the table. And so what we've done in this amendment is to say that it is still 100% of highway funds will go to the Department of Transportation, and they can use up to 1% of it for the supervision of highways. Now, Governor Shaheen's remarks back on October 24th, 1996 illustrate a number of important points. This doesn't have to be a partisan argument. During that debate, both Ovid Lamontagne and Jean Shaheen agreed funds shouldn't be diverted. It doesn't have to be a partisan argument at all. It also illustrates that once again, we are faced with a tax increase that is unnecessary, for which there is a solution, and that is the solution of stop diverting funds. Now, the argument that came up when we pointed this out, because it had never been brought up before in this debate, and the argument came up, well, you're trying to divert funds from the state police. State police is a core function. How can we do without state police? That is a false choice. Fully funding the state police would take 1.4% of the general fund budget. State police functioning is a core function of government. We need a state police. Obviously, we should have a state police. The state police, the Department of Safety, should come in and participate in the same process that is going on in the Finance Committee now. And that process is one where we look at core functions, we look at the things that we want to do, and we say to ourselves, do we have enough money to do it, or do we want to raise money for that function? We don't hide behind an argument that bridges are red listed in order to fund an agency that isn't using them to repair red listed bridges. The Department of Safety needs to come in, and it needs to convince the Finance Committee and eventually this House and eventually the House and the Senate and the Governor that its needs are as great as the needs of UNH, University of New Hampshire, or as great as the needs to fully fund the developmentally disabled waiting list, or to fully fund the children in need of services. That's what responsible budgeting involves, is legislators weighing needs and not trying to hide through a diversion of funds that's raised for one purpose, the funding of something entirely different. So we recommend this amendment. It demonstrates that during these hard economic times when people are concerned about jobs and the economy, that it's not necessary at all to raise the gas tax. It shows that we can take the 10-year plan if we start diverting funds, and we can probably make it into a 7 or 8 year plan. We can get to all the red listed bridges that need to be addressed. It shows the people that we understand that for many of them, having to pay $3 or $4 more in a fill-up of their car isn't chump change. It's important money. You know, I heard on the House floor when this bill came forward is, oh, come on, it's just a little bit of money. I heard that it's going to be absorbed by oil companies who, as an industry, have one of the lowest returns of investment of any industry, that somehow they're going to absorb it. No, it's going to be paid by somebody who's going to have to make a decision whether or not they can have enough money left after they fill up their car, to buy maybe a gallon of milk, or maybe some other need. That's the choice. And if we can do anything to avoid presenting that choice to our neighbors, then we need to do it. I recommend the amendment. The constitutional problem that was identified or suggested has been addressed. We don't need to increase the gas tax 83% or any amount. Thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you. Thank you, Representative, for your testimony. This Ober amendment that you are approving, that the House should maybe pass, if it is passed, would you be personally approving a gas tax or a gas toll to make sure that we do our due diligence in this state for the maintenance of bridges and roads?
We have red listed bridges out there. I do believe it is a marketing term. I went after I saw the spreadsheet and looked at bridges that were red listed in my district, and there's 3 of them. One surprised me entirely. It's a bridge on Route 13. I drive over every time I come up here. I've kayaked under it. It looked okay to me. No one had ever suggested that it's about to fall down. I look at the list of red listed bridges, and I see some of them are approaching their 4th decade as a red listed bridge without anyone answering the question is how did it manage to stay up for the last 30 plus years being red listed. But I'm willing to assume that there is a problem out there, and there's certainly a duty. The duty is to maintain a highway infrastructure. We raise more than enough money to do it for the reason that we tell people we're raising that money. We tell them that we're taxing you for your gas. We call a road toll because we want to keep your roads repaired. We want to build new roads. We want to expand Route 93. We get more than enough money to do it. It's not right to take money from people based upon one argument and then use it for another purpose. I can hear you now, though, for a second.
In that case, thank you for taking my question. You mentioned that when the cost of a gallon of gasoline goes up, the person filling that tank, particularly a person with limited resources, often has to make a decision between how much money they're going, whether they're going to buy a gallon of milk. That's the example you use. I asked for the representative from Nashville the same question, whether the committee took into consideration that the cost of that gallon of milk is going to increase as well as the cost to fill up his car. What you seem to be suggesting is that currently, for our allocation of funds, there's a method to repair, to pay the mileage amount, and even take care of the bridges that are in need of repair. I understood you correctly.
Yes, you have. Thank you for the question, because there will be increases in delivery charges. Among some of the hats that I've worn in the past, I wore a hat once where I owned a supermarket with a family member, and we would get deliveries in. And if gas went up, we would pay more. And it would sometimes be a lot more, maybe $500 or $600 a truckload in order to get deliveries into the supermarket. And unlike the testimony that we heard on the House floor a week ago yesterday, and unlike the suggestion from the member from Nashua or the member from Durham, I believe, that somehow that these amounts aren't passed on to consumers. They are. There's no magic pot of money that business people put their hand into when their costs go too much and they still want to provide the service or the goods to consumers. They have to go to the consumers and say, you need to pay more. That means that not only is this hypothetical consumer not going to have the $3 or $4, but when she has any money, she's going to pay more for a gallon of milk.
Representative O'Brien.
Maybe I better yell too. Do you have a spreadsheet or anything worked out on how much this would provide your proposal of removing the funds for all of the state troopers and highway safety onto the general fund that they can compete with children in need services and medical services?
Well, I could direct you to...
How much this would actually produce in terms of one of these spreadsheets, because the numbers are really add up.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chairman, for your question. There is a spreadsheet that the committee has because all members of the House had it. After the member from Nashua sent out his email that was identified as, I think could be identified now as the gift that keeps on giving email, he backfilled that and tried to show exactly how much money is currently being diverted. There is a spreadsheet he received that showed that roughly, if I remember the correct figure, identifies over the biennium about 150 to 151 million dollars. That's where we get the $75 million for each year. I direct you to that spreadsheet that came from Representative Campbell. Thank you.